Welcome back, everyone, to Open Line. We have with us Eric Stillman. He's the CEO of the Jewish Federation and Jewish Foundation of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. And we're talking about anti-Semitism. Is it on the rise across the country? A recent survey indicates many Jews believe it is. The general public in that same survey felt differently, did not see that anti-Semitism was on the rise. So this fascinating dichotomy that you see. And we just heard from Reverend Fuzz. So Reverend Fuzz called in the last segment, said he's going out to dinner. We all need to get out of our silos. He's invited a Jewish couple out to dinner. They're going to go talk, get to know each other better, and he kind of challenged all of us to do that. And so my question to you, let's say a Christian couple and a Jewish couple, they go out to dinner. What would you like as the Jewish representative for the Christian to ask to get to know you better? I guess this deep-seated dislike or hatred or whatever it is, it goes back so far. And so what are the questions that would be appropriate and not offensive to ask, and what would you like these two groups to come away, these two couples to come away with a better understanding?
Well, man, I think the starting point is just to understand each other as human beings. And so if you're talking about people who maybe are parents and they've got children, or they may have siblings, they may certainly have family relationships, and just begin by kind of understanding each other and asking very, very basic questions about what was your childhood like growing up? Where did you grow up, and what were your experiences? And just starting to get a feeling for who the other person is. And maybe they may find out that they both are parents of boys, or they have girls, or they have multiple siblings, and they maybe grew up in a poor area, or they grew up in a rural area or an urban area. You know, just understanding where the other person is coming from. And before you get into any of these sort of maybe tougher questions, ones that might have political or religious connotations to them, it's really, I think, great to get first to know each other as human beings. And then, you know, if the conversation flows into tell me about your religious understanding, or how do you practice your faith, and let me tell you how I practice my faith, and exploring where there are similarities and where there are differences, and understanding that, you know, somebody else's way of living and practicing a faith can be very eye-opening for someone who maybe is in a silo or a bubble and doesn't know anybody whose faith or practice is different from their own.
And so here in the South, you know, it's often called the Bible Belt. And so what is it like to be Jewish here in the South, in the Bible Belt? Is it more difficult, do you think, than it is up in the Northeast, which is not called the Bible Belt? Or you know, how are things different here in the South than other parts of the country?
Well, I can tell you, actually, the most important difference is here in the South, particularly in a place like Nashville and throughout Tennessee, where we don't have really large Jewish populations the way you might find, let's say, in the northeastern cities. So smaller numbers in the Jewish community. And so we really find that folks have to choose actively to get involved and to participate in the Jewish community. They recognize that they're less likely to have other Jewish neighbors, or they're less likely to have other Jewish coworkers. So if they want to develop connections within the Jewish community for themselves, for their children, they're going to need to put forth a little bit of effort. And so that might mean visiting a synagogue, going to the Jewish Community Center, participating in Jewish Federation activities. There are a lot of easy ways to do it, and folks realize, okay, well, they need to put forth just that little bit of effort, and then they can really enjoy all the benefits of being an active participant in the Jewish community. And that's, I think, probably the biggest difference between, let's say, big cities in the Northeast and many of our southern Jewish communities.
Is the Jewish community growing in our area?
Yes, actually, Nashville, as we know, Nashville as a whole is growing tremendously, and the Jewish community is growing too. And those are folks who are moving here for exactly the same reasons. Their job opportunities here, their business growth opportunities here, and the quality of life and the way in which people enjoy living in Middle Tennessee is something which is an attraction that draws people regardless of faith, regardless of their background or ethnicity. And so the same thing is true for members of the Jewish faith as it is for everybody else. This is a nice place to live, and everybody wants to, they come here and they see what a great place it is, and they say, well, gosh, I want to live in Nashville.
And do you know of people, again, I'm fascinated by this conversation that Reverend Fuzz is going to have. So they're going to be Christian and the Jewish couple, they go out, and that's what's so healthy. And you know, go out with people different than you, go out with people of different races and all of that. That's what we need to be doing, breaking bread and that kind of thing. And so I like what you said. Yeah, there's certainly things where we are all similar. Do you have kids? Where did you grow up? You know, all of those things. But if we get down into the nitty-gritty, you have a Christian and a Jew, what are how would you like that conversation to go? How do you navigate that conversation without offending the other person? What do you recommend? Or not go there? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think it's certainly important that people get to feel comfortable with one another, do have some understanding of who the other person is, and if you want to share, I always believe it's great to start by sharing one's own personal experience, and then perhaps asking the other person or other couple if they would like to share something. So, for instance, the Reverend, in his case, might talk about how he practices his faith. You know, he sounds like he's probably a person of faith and a person who has faith as part of his life on an ongoing basis. Well, I always enjoy when I'm having a conversation with someone who I'm getting to know for the first time, when they share their own experience, and then they can ask me, well, and what's your experience? And there are some fascinating similarities between the faiths. And yes, of course, there are differences. Sometimes they're nuanced differences. Sometimes they're much more profound differences. However, as you get to know somebody and you see them as a fellow human being, and then you talk about how faith gets practiced or what one's views are on different subjects, it's much easier if you are willing to be open, share one's own point of view or one's own experience, and then offer as an opportunity to say, would you care to share about, you know, how you practice your faith or what your holiday observances are like? And you know, there's so many times where people will say, gosh, I had no idea how much of a similarity there was, and how many holidays revolve around food and revolve around family. And you know, regardless of one's faith, regardless of one's ethnicity, that's part of just, we're human beings. And you know, and I find there's usually so much more that we have in common than what is different or divides us.
I love that. Okay, that's perfect. That's a great sort of blueprint. And going into it, nobody wants to convert the other person. It's just a better understanding of the other person. All right, I like that. All right, that's great. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back, continue our discussion, and take a few more calls. We'll be back right after this.